In the streets of Kumasi, there was a man everyone admired. His name was Kwamena Pinto, a man who had risen from the depths of poverty to the heights of unimaginable wealth. His generosity knew no bounds. He built schools, hospitals, and even provided scholarships for underprivileged children. To the outside world, Kwamena Pinto was a saint. But if only they knew the true source of his money, they would shudder in terror. Kwamena Pinto's mansion stood tall in the upscale neighborhood of Tafo, a symbol of his success. The gates were always open to the poor who came to seek his help. He was their savior, the man who had once been like them and had now come back to lift them out of their struggles. Na Ajali, one of the beneficiaries of Kwamena's generosity, speaking to her friend Munsa. "I'm telling you, Munsa, if it weren't for Mr. Pinto, I wouldn't have been able to pay my children's school fees this year. He's such a kind man. Can you imagine? He doesn't even ask for anything in return." Amma nodded in agreement. "You're right, Na. My brother got a job at one of his companies, and now he's able to take care of his family. May God bless Mr. Pinto." But as the two women chatted in admiration, they had no idea that Kwamena Pinto's wealth was stained with blood. Behind the walls of his mansion, in the dead of night, unspeakable rituals took place. At the center of Kwamena's wealth was Abumi Jiwa, a powerful juju priest from Benin. Abumi Jiwa had promised Kwamena wealth beyond imagination, but it came at a price so steep that even the devil himself would hesitate to pay it. "Kwamena, the spirits demand more. You've grown too powerful and they thirst for fresh blood. The blood of the innocent. Bring me another child and your fortune will continue to grow," Abumi Jiwa said in a dark, foreboding voice. "But Abumi Jiwa, how much longer can I keep doing this? How many more lives must I take? I've already sacrificed so much," Kwamena said, struggling with the weight of his deeds. "As long as you want to keep your wealth, Kwamena. The spirits give but they also take. Don't forget who made you who you are," Abumi Jiwa said with a chilling smile. And so, Kwamena continued his dark rituals, sacrificing children and pregnant women to feed his insatiable greed. He would drive through the slums at night, identifying his next victim, a child who wouldn't be missed. He made sure to choose carefully: orphans, street children, those who had no one to search for them if they disappeared. One fateful night, as Kwamena drove through the streets of Kenyasi, his eyes fell on a young pregnant woman sitting by the roadside. She looked weak, her clothes tattered, her eyes full of despair and were filled with tears. Her name was Isi. She had a quarrel with the father of her unborn child and had been abandoned by the father of her unborn child. Desperate and alone, she had nowhere to go. "She's perfect. A woman and her unborn child, the spirits will be pleased," Kwamena said to himself. Kwamena pulled up beside her, his voice dripping with false kindness. "Sister, why are you sitting here all alone at this time of night? It's dangerous," Kwamena said in a friendly tone. "Sir, I have nowhere else to go. I had a misunderstanding with my boyfriend and he had sacked me from the house. If you can help me with a place to lodge just for the night, I would be forever grateful." Isi replied. She was hesitant but desperate. Kwamena said in a friendly tone, "Oh, get into the car, I can get you a place to stay." Isi didn't know that she had just accepted a ride with the devil himself. As she climbed into the car, Kwamena's mind was already calculating the next steps. She would be his next sacrifice. When they arrived at Kwamena's mansion, Isi was overwhelmed by its grandeur. She had never seen such wealth, such luxury. But behind the beauty, there was a darkness lurking, a darkness that she would soon discover. Kwamena led Isi into the mansion. "Wait here. I'll get you something to eat." As Kwamena left the room, Isi's instincts began to kick in. Something wasn't right. The house was too quiet, too eerie. She looked around and noticed strange symbols etched into the walls: calabash with a red fabric sitting on top of the center table, candles burning in the corners of the room. Her heart began to race. She quietly got up and started to explore the mansion, hoping to find a way out. That's when she stumbled upon a hidden room, a room filled with blood-stained tools, a pile of human bones and photos of the missing children she had seen on the news. Her blood ran cold. This man was no savior, he was a monster. "I have to get out of here, now?" Isi whispered to herself. Isi knew she had to act fast. She bolted for the door, but as she reached it, Kwamena appeared, blocking her path. His once kind face now twisted with rage. "Where do you think you're going? You're not leaving this house alive," Kwamena said furiously. "Please, let me go. I won't tell anyone, I swear. Just let me leave." But Kwamena wasn't listening. He lunged at her, grabbing her by the arm and tried to choke her down. But EC wasn't going down without a fight. She kicked and scratched, desperate to save her unborn child. In the chaos, she managed to break free and ran for her life. As she fled through the streets of Kumasi, her heart pounded in her chest. She didn't stop until she collapsed by the roadside, exhausted and terrified. That's where she was found by some military men patrolling that night. Sergeant Kofi Asare was the leader of this military team. They were on their way to barracks from duty. "Madam, are you all right? What happened to you?" asked Sergeant Asare. Isi, breathlessly, tears streaming down her face. "Please help me, he tried to kill me, he's a murderer." She pointed to the direction to Kwamena Pinto's house. "His house. So many children, you have to stop him," said Isi, breathless with tears streaming down her face. Sergeant Asare and his team knew something was terribly wrong. Isi's terror was real and her words were chilling. Sergeant Asare immediately contacted the police in that locality, and within hours, a full-scale investigation was launched. The police raided Kwamena's mansion the next morning, uncovering horrors beyond imagination. In the basement, they found the remains of the children Kwamena had sacrificed, bones, bloodstains, and the tools he had used. He had a deep freezer filled with the flesh of humans. The city of Kumasi was in shock. The man they had once revered as a hero was nothing more than a cold-blooded killer. "I can't believe this, how did we not see it? He was right under our noses, donating money, helping the poor, and all the while he was killing them." Detective Owusu, a police officer, said to Sergeant Asare. "Evil hides in plain sight, detective. But now we have to make sure he pays for what he's done," Sergeant said grimly. As the police searched the mansion, Kwamena Pinto was nowhere to be found. He had fled before they arrived and now he was on the run. But the hunt was on. The search for Kwamena Pinto was now the topic of the nation. In the media, the attention had moved from politics to Kwamena's criminal case and the whole nation was watching. The man who had once been praised as a savior was now the most wanted criminal in Ghana. With Kwamena's face plastered across every news channel and social media platform, it was only a matter of time before he was caught. But he was a cunning man and he knew how to stay hidden. He moved from town to town, always one step ahead of the authorities. Kwamena, talking to himself in a rundown hideout. "They'll never catch me. I've come too far to be taken down now. The spirits will protect me, they have to," Kwamena said to himself. He disguised himself as a madman and was eating on refused dumps. People passed by him without recognizing him. He thought the spirits had blinded the people around him. But the spirits he once trusted had turned against him. The weight of his sins was catching up, and as the days passed, Kwamena became more paranoid, more desperate. He knew his time was running out. For weeks, the search for Kwamena Pinto dominated the headlines. His face was on every television screen, every newspaper. People would call on radio stations to claim that they had spotted him in a place, but anytime policemen were discharged to those places, they would come out with nothing. It became the talk of town that his juju was so powerful that he could disappear when the police tried to catch him. The people who once praised him now cursed his name. The fear in Kumasi was palpable. No one could believe that a man who had done so much good was capable of such evil. But the truth was undeniable. As Kwamena moved through the shadows, he knew his options were running out. He had no more allies, no more safe havens. He chose a cemetery in a remote part of Kumasi as his humble abode, but the pressure there was getting too much. He couldn't sleep and was getting mad as the days went by. He decided to leave Kumasi. The spirits had abandoned him, and he was left to face the consequences of his actions alone. One night, as he hid in a remote village in the Bono Ahafo region, he heard a noise outside his hideout. At first, he thought it was just his paranoia playing tricks on him again, but then he heard it again. A rustling in the bushes, footsteps approaching. His heart pounded in his chest. "Who's there? Show yourself," Kwamena whispered to himself, terrified. But there was no answer. The silence was deafening. Kwamena reached for the knife he had been carrying for protection and slowly made his way to the door. As he opened it, a flashlight suddenly shone in his face. "It's over, Kwame. You have nowhere left to run," Sergeant Asare said in a calm but firm voice. Kwamena froze. Sergeant Kofi Asare stood before him, flanked by a team of heavily armed soldiers. There was no escape this time. The once powerful and feared man was now cornered like an animal. He tried to turn to escape, but a heavy slap changed his direction. Please, officer, you don't understand. I had no choice. The spirits, they demanded it. They made me do it." Kwamena pleading desperately. "Don't you dare blame the spirits, Kwamena. You made your choices. You killed pregnant women and innocent children, and for what? Money? Power? It ends here," said Sergeant Asare. Kwamena knew he was defeated. His knees buckled and he collapsed to the ground, sobbing. The weight of his sins finally crashing down on him. The soldiers moved in, securing him in handcuffs. The nightmare was over, for now. But as they escorted him to the waiting vehicles, Kwamena's eyes met Isi's, the woman he had tried to kill. She stood there, her belly now much larger, her face etched with pain and anger. "You took so much from us, Kwamena. How many more lives would you have destroyed?" Isi said with her voice trembling. I'm sorry. "Forgive me," Kwamena uttered. "I can't, only God can judge you now," Isi said firmly. As Kwamena was led away, the people of the village began to gather, whispering among themselves. The man they had once feared was now a broken shadow of himself. But even as he was taken into custody, the full story had yet to be told. Kwamena Pinto's trial became one of the most high-profile cases in Ghana's history. The courtroom was packed every day as the gruesome details of his crimes were revealed. The nation watched in horror as the evidence mounted against him. The photos, the testimonies, the rituals. But even as the verdict was delivered, guilty on all counts, there was no sense of closure. The scars left by his actions ran too deep. The families of the children he had killed would never be the same. And as Kwamena was led away to serve his sentence, the whispers continued. People still wondered, how many others were out there hiding behind their wealth and power? How many more were